Greetings! In today's video, I'll showcase more of the awesome tube watercolors made by Renesans. There's a bit of backstory behind this big pile of paints. Some months ago, awesome watcher Malvina sent me some Renesans paints to try out. I was also sent the 24 half-pan set to review by April from the A Little Creative shop. The Renesans people saw my reviews and were happy with them, and they decided to send me some of their tube paints to try out and review. They sent me 66 tubes! April kindly sent me the missing 4 tubes from the range so I could make videos about the whole thing. Huge thanks to Malvina, April, and Renesans for making this video possible. When I first got the tubes, I made 2 live stream sessions where I swatched all the colors I had, from fresh paint, on cellulose paper. These are the square swatches on screen right now. I've added the 4 missing colors. What I want to do now is to swatch all the colors from dry paint in a palette. I've prepared sheets with the colors' names by color family. I've also managed to find a palette with room for 72 colors, which means I can have all 70 colors of this range in the same palette. Granted, it's not a small palette at all, but I'm glad to have it all together in the same space. The palette is a double-decker palette by Magello. I'm really glad one of the trays is movable. That means I can close down the palette and keep all the paints safe from gravity. More on that later. I poured the paints in the palette and waited a few days until they were dry. I did not pre-wet the paints before painting the swatches, I just worked them a bit with my brush. I also decided to swatch them out in color families, as a way to split out 70 colors in categories that make sense to me. I started with the neutral colors, the whites, grays, and blacks. The range has a mixing, or transparent white, and a more opaque one. It also has 2 grays and 3 blacks. They are all quite different. Mineral gray is lighter and opaque, neutral gray is quite dark and semi-opaque. Ivory black is the more transparent black, Mars black the more granulating, and lamp black the more opaque one. I lost the footage of the first 3 colors I put in the yellow category, so sorry about that. There are 3 variants of Naples yellow, all with some level of opacity to them. There's a really nice selection of yellows to choose from, starting with the super light and slightly opaque titanium yellow, through some nice bright cadmium hues, and going to the deep transparent yellow. I put in here the transparent gold ochre, but perhaps it would have fit better with the earth tones, or further down with the oranges. It's a lovely color, just not exactly a yellow hue. The range doesn't offer a lot of orange colors, but it has plenty of yellows and reds to mix a nice orange. The reds and magenta are the next color family I'm swatching. Renesans offer mini cadmium reds, which might make some happy and some less happy. The cadmiums and the scarlet red are mostly on the warm red side of things, while permanent carmine, quinacridone red, and purple magenta are slightly cooler reds. I put the violet and blues together. The manganese violet is really lovely. The ultramarine violet is a mix, which is something Schmincke also does. I am not sure why companies don't use straight up PV15 for this color. The color named mineral violet is actually dioxazine violet. Renesans then has a nice selection of beautiful blues with really nice pigmentation. The ultramarine blue is deep and easy to wet, something that I really appreciate. The Prussian blue is really dark and deep. There are 2 phthalo blues, 2 cobalt blues, Indian throne blue, and a cobalt turquoise. The 2 darker blues, indigo hue and Payne's gray, are also a bit more muted. The Payne's gray is definitely hinting strongly to the blue, so I put it here with the other blue swatches. As we move on to the greens, it's perhaps worth mentioning that this range doesn't have a cobalt teal paint, the super bright aqua variant. In terms of blue-green colors, we have the Prussian green and helio turquoise here. Then it's on to the greens, with permanent and sap green. There are a few cobalt greens here, chromium oxide green, and a rather light phthalo green blue shade. The other 4 green colors are nice hues that feel natural and ready to use. The last color family is the earth tones, starting with gold ochre and yellow ochre. I love all the variations of PBR7, PY42, and PR101 they were able to put in the range. The orange and red ochre, as well as the Mars Bordeaux, are really nice and rich hues. The Potter's Pink is a bit hard to wet, as is common with this pigment, but it's a really lovely pink hue. It's not as muted as other Potter's Pink I've used. Brown Madder and Polished Brown are really interesting colors. The Burnt Umber is nice and rich. The Raw Umber was a bit harder to wet and weaker, but I love the Sepia and Van Dyke Brown hues. Lastly, the Perylene Violet is a bit odd for a color with that name, but it's still a really nice color, like a purple tinted neutral. While the swatches dry, I want to show you something really peculiar I noticed with these paints. When I set up my palette, I let it dry for a few days, completely flat. That's how I generally proceed. Once the paints are dry, they are generally stable, at least in the weather I have here. When the Renaissance paints felt dry, I closed up the palette and started with my other palettes. You can imagine my surprise when I opened the box and saw that adventurous yellow. I initially thought, well, maybe the paint wasn't that dry. Maybe by closing up the palette, it kept in the moisture and made the paint wet again. I touched the yellow, and here's the odd part. It still feels completely dry, not sticky at all. So I pressed on it, and it was still soft to the touch. I poked at other colors and noticed that many of them were still soft, yet absolutely dry to the touch. As far as I know, these are the only paints I have that behave this way. I had stored the palette at a slight angle, and that caused the yellow to slowly spread to the mixing area. For the last segment of this video, I'll be comparing both sets of dry swatches. The square ones are made from fresh paints on cellulose paper. The stripes swatches are made from dry paint on cotton paper. The colors stay very similar, but I think they look better on the cotton paper. It makes for a smoother application, and the colors are more even. Overall, I'm really excited about these colors. For me, the dark cadmium reds and the earth tones are what I'm the most drawn to. Another key feature of these paints is that they are rather affordable. If you are in North America and are curious about them, please check out the link to April's shop in the description below. She's the only place for us to get these paints. So this is it for my second step into reviewing these paints. I still want to explore them more, but for such a large number of colors, it's not a simple task. More on these to come. If you want to hear more about these paints, I know that Steve from The Mind of Watercolor and Lindsay the Frugal Crafter have both made very nice video reviews of these paints. I'll put the links in the description below. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.